The RG Wing Gundam Zero is a sublime kit. It is gorgeous, but I'll push the details even further and give it a fresh color scheme. Alright, welcome back to the channel. Today we have the latest and greatest real grade from Bandai, the RG Wing Gundam Zero from the TV series. Here's what the side of the box looks like, showing off the gimmicks and features of the kit as well as some iconic poses. And one side that's made for displaying the box is upright, which I've really grown to like. This is a thick box, and opening it up reveals 4 bags of runners and the instruction manual at the bottom. We get 12 runners packed with parts, typical of RGs, but no advanced MS joint. The molded details are superb, especially on the body and wing frame. But that's enough gawking, it's time to build it. I cut out all the parts off the runners with my basic nipper and placed them in separate bins. And I take out my god hands from its scabbard sanctuary. I then remove the remaining nubs off the parts as close as I can get them. Cutting out all the parts first before removing the nubs of each part is more efficient in my opinion. It saves me time switching between tools for all the parts. Although, I may just be fooling myself. What do you guys think? What's the one thing you do to make your builds more efficient? Building up the kit is as fun as I remember RGs to be. The last one I built was the RG Epion that I turned into the Banshee. So building this next feels right. I didn't have a problem in any part of the build, and I didn't encounter any part that I felt was gonna break. It's amazing how dense each section feels while still allowing a lot of articulation. Bandai did a great job with the proportions of this kit, improving the original line art. The bigger wings are a nice upgrade. This has now become my favorite Wing Gundam silhouette. And now, to make it even better. To begin, I prescribed all the panel lines for a sharper look. For anyone who wants to get into making your own panel lines, this is a great practice to get comfortable with holding a scriber and using it on plastic. For 1/144th scale, I mostly use a 0.1mm scriber. But there are some lines that require an even thinner scriber. With the gap here on the thigh armor, I used a 0.075mm scriber to rescribe the edges of the gap and not deepen the gap itself. The difference between the rescribed thigh and how it looks before is noticeable. After sanding the armor surfaces, I sketched out the designs I intended to add. Then I began warming up with the simple lines first, easy lines, before moving on to the more challenging parts of the designs. I also began using more of this guide tape by Haikyuu Parts. This is actually the first guide tape I bought back in October 2022, but back then, I thought it was awful. Wouldn't stick to the plastic or would slide a little bit as I was scribing. It also kept curling up, which would make it come off the plastic with a slight touch. But now I realize that it was my inexperience with scribing and lack of understanding of the tape that caused all those issues. I switched to using the display guide tape mainly because of the ruled surface, but now I'm going to like the scribing guide tape by Haikyuu Parts, specifically because it sticks better over another piece of tape unlike the display guide tape, which means you can overlap them fine without worry about tape not being secure when you are making your lines. Comparing the unmodified skirt with the finished one, you can see how much the design I went for has completely changed the feel of the skirt without being too much. That's how I basically tried to go about the new lines I added. Simple lines that complement the geometry of the parts, notches to go with those lines, and some claw plates here and there to add visual depth to the design. Some claw plates were applied directly on top of the surface of the armor, like these ones that I added onto the shoulder. For the plates I added onto the knees, I first carved out a section at the front. Then, I add a piece of styrene strip that's been chamfered at the top. This gives a set-in look to the added detail, making it feel more purposeful, or like it has function more than just a raised detail. The legs have good armor separation and geometry to them, but lack surface detail for me. So I add more panel lines and notches. With the back of the calves, I make a reference line first. This will serve as a positioning guide for a MadWorks template. I then secured the template with CA glue on one corner and made light passes around the template. And here's a comparison of the detailed up leg against the unmodified leg. I was really pleased with everything so far. But one area I consistently struggle with, especially in this scale, are the arms. Maybe it's the limited real estate to work with, or maybe because they're commonly obstructed by weapons and shields anyway. But I find it hard to make additional panel lines that would make some sense. So here's my best crack at it for this kit. The chest also has limited space, so I kept it simple. It has a curved surface as well, so I used the flexible guide tape, similar to the Tamiya masking tape for curves. And for the beautiful head of the Wing Gundam Zero, I did not do a lot really. I rescribed the vents on the front of the face because they were just flat. Quick tip: use a toothpick to remove the V-fin by pushing from the back. I found this was the safest way to remove it without breaking the fins. Then I sharpened the tips by carefully filing them down to a nice point. They're already a good length, so I did not sharpen them by adding material to the tip. The only seam line this kit has is on the back of the head. So I decided to go with a simple solution: make it into a panel line. I made a tiny gap between the parts and used the SAB02 to chamfer the edges of the two parts. Then I closed it back up. Now that there is a start of a panel line, I went through it with my 0.2mm scriber to complete it and finish all of the modifications on this build. After that, I took a small moment to admire at how the impression of the kit has changed from the work I did. Seeing it as a whole got me pumped and relieved that I was moving on to the next phase: painting. And as I have said before, this is the part I love the most. So I broke everything down and put them on alligator clips. There are a lot more parts than alligator clips I own, so I had to do this in batches. First, I did the frame, but before I start painting, small unboxing. This is my current respirator. As you can see, the bottom strap has broken, and the top strap is starting to give. It can still hold a seal, but I went ahead and bought a new one before the old one completely gave out. Now, there's a lot of cool stuff to buy in this hobby, but never compromise on gear to protect yourself, especially if you airbrush. You don't want to ruin your lungs. I primed the frame parts with black surfacer, and most of them will stay this way. It's not often that you see a black painted frame. You usually see people paint the frame in grays or in different metallics. But I think this will give the color scheme I have in mind a nice contrast. I did paint some details. I used a burnt iron paint marker from Mr. Color to paint details that are supposed to be silver using the stickers included in the box. This is a great way to paint small details fast and easy. I also hand painted the tubing detail behind the knees with red Tamiya enamel paint. I find that dabbing on the paint works better than brush strokes to get a nice even finish. Moving on to the verniers, I started by putting double-sided tape on a piece of cardboard. Then, I stuck on the thrusting parts of this kit so I could paint them all together instead of having 8 alligator clips to switch between in all stages. I primed them with a gloss black surfacer from Modo, and I am in love with this primer. This is gonna be my primer for all my metallic paints. After the primer had dried, I sprayed the inner part with some titanium gold first. This will brighten up the next paint, pure metallic red from Tamiya, because metallic red over black just looks maroon. And to finish the inside of the thrusters, I sprayed fluorescent clear from Gaia. If you've watched my other builds, you know how great this effect is. After letting that dry, I masked the inside with strips of masking tape and some sticky tack to fill in the center. I covered the overspray with some black paint, and then sprayed a coat of Jumpwind stainless steel. To finish this batch of parts, I sprayed the verniers and frame with a semi-gloss clear coat. I removed the masking tape and sticky tack to check my work. That looks perfect. Moving on to the next batch of parts, the armor panels. I primed some of the pieces with Nazca Mecha Surf Super Heavy, which is a dark gray color. Black is too dark for what I intend to do. Subtle modulation, which I intend to use to give contour to panels and just assist the shadows a little bit. So I masked an upper part of the armor where I want a bit of shadow later. Then I painted the lower part with a gradient maintaining a hint of the dark gray primer on the lowermost edge. I then removed the masking tape and apply a gradient to the previously masked section. I took care not to spray too heavily and lose the shadowy edge. How does that look? The modulation adds a little bit more depth to the piece. Disclaimer, I have not done modulation before. And if you have, you'll know that it usually entails multiple hues and brightness shifts of the base color to simulate shadows and highlights. What I did here is a very simple modulation. Like I said earlier, intended to only help the shadows, not simulate highlights. I did the same on the parts meant to be in darker grays, only this time I primed them in black to really get dark shadows. And I also did this on parts I wanted to be in red. What's different is that I primed in pink and applied a shadow of purple on the lower edge. Use purple to darken a red color. Use black if you want it really dark and a more maroon color. The sensors were first painted with Gaia Chrome. It goes on nicely even on bare plastic. Next, I sprayed clear red before spraying fluorescent red at the end. I sprayed all the armor parts with a good coat of clear gloss. I find that gradients tend to be delicate if you do anything on them without a clear varnish. This will help protect it from subsequent steps. For panel lining the parts, I used the good old reliable Tamiya panel line accent color. This should really be part of your routine in Gunpla building. Even the simplest builds benefit so much. I used dark gray for the lighter colored parts and black for the dark grays, which will all be cleaned by, you guessed it, lighter fluid. I bought this kit and the decals fairly early when it released here in the States, so the decals I bought are actually for the RG Wing Gundam 0 EW version. The LP and G rework hadn't released the set yet when I made my purchase. I was surprised to find that there are not a lot of caution markings on this decal sheet. It's a small sheet. So I supplemented it with some caution markings from Haikyuu parts. The decal placement is minimal. I did not want to overcrowd the details and strain the viewer's eyes. I wanted the design to breathe. And lastly, a final top coat of Gaia EX Flat for the white panels and semi-gloss for the dark grays. All that was left was to assemble everything and hope that all the added details and the modified paint scheme works. The Real Grade Wing Gundam 0 is the best Gundam model kit to date. It's a marvel of model kit engineering and a fantastic addition to the Real Grade line. The gimmicks are pretty cool and amazing to see in this scale. The bigger wings and its details are superb. It was fun customizing this and enhancing the surface details. But even if you don't customize, it's one hell of a fun time putting this kit together and painting it. I decided to give it a more duller scheme than the bright multicolored scheme that is standard of main protagonist suits. And I really like it better. Do you? That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed and it was worth the watch. If you did, consider subscribing and leaving a like. You guys make creating these videos worth it. Leave a comment if you have any questions or suggestions. I love talking shop and hearing your thoughts. So, until next time, have a wonderful day and keep on building.